What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week we got UFC Fight Night Zhang Mingyang versus Johnny Walker taking place in China. Hometown fight for the Mountain Tiger. Gotta love Mingyang Zhang. But without any further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get right into the full card predictions. First fight on the card we have Nurgozhay versus Satybaldiev. Yuridon, he fought Marcus Budai in his UFC debut a few months back. Had a pretty slow fight. Lost a split decision there, I believe it was. Decently competitive. He showed a decent version of himself, and Martin Budai is, solid. Nurgozhay, he had a really impressive win on the Contender Series. Looked good with his striking. Got a head kick TKO. And then in the UFC, he hasn't been doing too good. I'm pretty sure he lost his debut to Brinson Ribeiro. Yeah, lost his debut to Brinson Ribeiro by submission in the second round there. Kind of a bad loss to take. Brinson Ribeiro, not super high level, but you can kind of look past that. I don't think that Satybaldiev really has any jiu-jitsu offensive capabilities. I think this is just going to be a striking affair on the feet where, I'm going to take Satybaldiev to win because look, Nurgozhay has this really weird tick where he constantly blinks when he fights, and I just can't back him to win. It's just a really weird tick. I don't like it. I feel like he's not going to be able to see shots coming, and he has not been able to fix it in all of the fights that I've seen from him. He's well-rounded. He's decent, but, so is Udon, and I think Udon, is going to be a little bit, stronger in clinch positions. I could see this being a slow fight. So, yeah, give me Udon by decision. Next fight on the card, Su Yu versus Rong Zhu. Look, two Asian fighters here. Not super familiar with them. I'm pretty sure Yu is more of a jiu-jitsu grappler specialist. And, Rong Zhu, much more of a striker. I believe he was on that Robert Whittaker and Ikram Aliskerov card last summer. But he does have a KO win over Quang Li, which is a pretty decent win. And, Yu went to a decision with AJ Cunningham, and I think that AJ Cunningham, you need to be getting a finish over him if you're decent whatsoever. So give me Rong Zhu. I'll take him to win a decision here. I just don't like the look of taking AJ to a decision. You're clearly not that dangerous. And Rong Zhu, Quang Li has really good jiu-jitsu submission abilities. If he can avoid that and get the KO, I think he can do the same against Yu. So, yeah, give me Rong Zhu here to win this one. Zha Yi versus Weston Wilson. Some of these names, man. Zha Yi. You've never seen that in your life. But, yeah, I'm going to take him to beat Weston Wilson. Look, Weston Wilson, we know the deal with him. One of the worst fighters in the UFC. He's not going to win this fight. We don't need to spend too much time yapping about that one. Pereira versus Kyle Daukas. Look, Kyle Daukas, he's been very inactive, hasn't he? He actually got cut from the UFC. He's coming back into the UFC from the regional scene. He's been doing all right, and he definitely could get the job done here because if he has any type of cardio and grappling threat, he should be able to beat Pereira, who is very good in the first round, but after that, absolutely falls off a cliff. He's been looking horrible recently. In the Fluffy fight looked terrible, and the Abus Magomedov fight looked terrible, and he's definitely, he seems like he's fallen off of a cliff. I don't know if he got off of roids or what, but he was on a good win streak, looking super dangerous. People were picking him to knock out Fluffy, and now, there's a chance that Kyle Daukas could get the better of him. And you know what? I'll actually pick Kyle Daukas to win a decision here. Pereira really just hasn't looked that dangerous ever since, that win streak that he went on. In these last few, he's really looked slow and kind of checked out like Bruno Silva. So I'm going to pick Kyle Daukas here to win a decision using some grappling, just kind of getting crafty with it. And we know that Pereira has no cardio. So yeah, I'll take Kyle Daukas to sneak himself a decision. Next fight on the card, Austin Hubbard versus Rong Zhu. I'm going to pick Rong Zhu here. Look, Austin Hubbard, veteran of the sport, decent with his takedowns. He had a pretty competitive fight with Markel Medeiros in his last fight where he did get the back a little bit, had some, advantageous positions with the grappling, but ultimately lost a split decision there. Lost a split decision to Alexander Hernandez as well. So, he's losing really close fights two decent levels of competition who are, young and in their prime as well. Same situation here with Rong Zhu. Rong Zhu coming in off a great win, which was a scrap against Cody Steele. And Cody Steele has good grappling as well. Mainly struck in that fight, really didn't try to level change that much. But Rong Zhu, when he fought Chris Padilla before that elbow, he was winning that fight. He was winning all the exchanges. I believe he did stuff a few takedowns as well. And, look, he's very athletic. He's quick with his hands. He's got good boxing abilities. He has got great stamina. He's really tough. Even in that Chris Padilla fight when he got elbowed, he wanted to keep going until the doctor stopped it. And, that absolute war with Cody Steele, both of them got dropped. The durability it may have some question marks, but Austin Hubbard really doesn't hit hard. I think that Rong Zhu is going to be doing way more damage in this fight, and Austin Hubbard will definitely get some takedowns. He might get some, back takes, body triangle, but I don't think he's going to finish the fight via submission or ground and pound. And Rong Zhu, while it's on the feet, he's going to be winning every single exchange. And, hometown fighter, he's going to have the crowd on his side. He's going to have the judges on his side. I think he gets a decision win here over Austin Hubbard. He's tough, hard to put away. Give me Rong Zhu by decision. All right, next fight on the card, Kavanagh versus Charles Johnson, Energy. Interesting fight here in the featherweight division. Not featherweight, flyweight division. What am I saying? 125-pound division. I actually really like this fight. Both of these guys I'm a fan of. Kavanagh, prospect out of England, nasty TKO in the Contender Series last year. And he's gone 2-0 in the UFC over Felipe dos Santos and Jose Ochoa, two solid fighters there. And his striking is very, very good. He's got great hand combinations, really good speed, nice snappy front kicks up the middle. And he also has really good counter shots. His wrestling as well has been improving. We saw that in his last fight versus Felipe dos Santos. Trains out of Manchester top team with, Laurent Murphy and all those guys. It might be Great Britain top team, but I think he's in the gym with guys like Laurent Murphy and who's the guy that just got signed tonight? Scotty, the Scottish lad, not Scottish, but Lewis Lee Scott. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Lewis Lee Scott on the feet, who just got signed on the Contender Series. But look, Kavanagh, very talented. I actually do expect him to use his wrestling in this fight because Charles Johnson, he's a veteran. He's going to have a length and, reach advantage here. He's going to be a little bit taller, but that didn't help him in his last fight versus Ramazan Tamirov, where he did put together a good little win streak as at Maxim, Hadley, Josh Van, Sumaderji. But, we have seen him lose fights in the past due to grappling. Rafael Estevam, Cody Durden. I think that Kavanagh can use some takedowns here like those opponents did. And also, he has lost striking battles before. Ode Osborne was getting touched up a little bit before the KO against Joshua Van, and also Ramazan Tamirov, had a really good performance against Charles Johnson in that fight. Was landing really nice counter shots, really good combinations to the body against Charles Johnson. I think that Kavanagh can use similar tactics here. He's going to be the much faster fighter for sure. The quick twitch, striking ability is off the charts. Charles Johnson, he's got good volume, he's got good accuracy, good boxing, good pressure, nice Muay Thai skills with his teeps and, roundhouse kicks. But, Kavanagh, he's going to beat him to the punch. He hits harder, he's faster, he's got good combinations in his own right. And also, like I said, he's going to be able to change levels when he needs to. And unless he completely gasses out and Charles Johnson is kind of able to craft his way into the later rounds, I think it's going to go very similar to the Tamirov fight where Lerner gets the first two. Charles Johnson has to try to push for a finish in the third. He's not able to get it. And, he loses a 29-28. So, yeah, give me Kavanagh to win a 29-28 decision here. Next fight on the card, Gage Young versus Maheshate. I'm going to take Gage Young here. Look, in terms of his UFC ability and what we've seen from him at the UFC level, Quillen Salakid and also Evan Elder, he's lost both of those fights. But, look, he's been in there. He's displayed some decent qualities. And, look, Maheshate, he's on a pretty bad losing streak, I'm pretty sure. Not a losing streak, but, His only win recently is against Gabriel Benitez, who's super low level. Nicholas Mota beat him. Borjas knocked him out. Rafa Garcia beat him. Somehow he was able to beat Steve Garcia back in the day, but, that was more or less just a lucky punch. Look, I think that Gage Young's going to be able to get the job done. I really don't rate anything that Maheshate has to offer. He has okay striking, doesn't really mix in anything else. Gage Young trains in America. He has some grappling. We've seen that on the regional scene. Decent striking overall. He took his fight with Evan Elder on short notice as well. I don't think he was really ready for that. Full camp, he should be able to get the job done over Maheshate. So yeah, give me Gage Young to get it done by decision. All right, don't know how to pronounce this name. Nurgozhay versus Kiefer Crosbie. I'm going to be taking Nurgozhay to win via TKO, though, nonetheless, because he's an absolute killer. If you look at his tape, he's highlight reeling people. And look, Kiefer Crosbie, kind of an old head. What's he really ever done in the UFC? Lose to Sam Patterson and Kevin Jousset by submission. Yeah, I think he's going to get finished up here pretty quickly. Looks like he's getting put into a position to lose. So yeah, give me Nurgozhay to win via first round TKO. Look, the dude's striking is just really nasty. He's fast. Kiefer Crosbie, old head fighter. Kiefer Crosbie is an old head fighter. He's 35 years of age. Nurgozhay is going to be younger here, hungrier. Hometown opportunity, he's getting it done. I don't know why Fight Odds, the website I'm using right now to look at this, said that Kiefer Crosbie was 29. Sometimes they have the ages messed up on this, but next fight on the card, Sumaderji versus Kevin Borjas. I'm going to be taking Kevin Borjas to win a decision here. I like his boxing for the most part. Looked good against Rolando Rodriguez in his last fight. Got a decision win there. Getting leg kick TKO though versus Alessandro Acosta is not a good look. But, had a pretty decently contested fight with Joshua Van. And look, he's been making fight-to-fight improvements. I like the boxing skills where Sumaderji, basically just a striker as well. Sumaderji, he's really only losing when he's, getting grappled, getting taken down, getting submitted. I think we see this fight take place 3 rounds on the feet. And Sumaderji, he's well-rounded. He's got some calf kicks, front kicks up the middle. He can mix in different tools, but I think that Borjas hits harder. He could probably get some cuts upstairs, landing good hooks. Cutting him on the eyelid, things like this. I think that Borjas is going to land a lot more noticeable damage with his hands over the course of 3 rounds. So, yeah, give me Kevin Borjas to win a 30-27 decision here. I say he wins all 3 rounds on the feet. All right, next fight on the card, we have Sergey Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortes Acosta. Interesting one here. I'm going to take Waldo Cortes Acosta to beat Sergey Pavlovich because, look, Waldo Cortes Acosta and Sergey Pavlovich, they can both mix in the grappling a little bit if they need to, but I think that both of them are just good enough with the grappling to avoid the other ones. So I think this is going to be a classic heavyweight big slugging matchup where, Pavlovich back in the day, we used to think that he was like a technical boxer, setting up clean shots like that uppercut he hit Blades with, but look, realistically, he starts trading and he just starts big slugging and they go to war until somebody drops. And I think that Waldo Cortes Acosta, he may not hit as hard naturally as the refrigerator Sergey Pavlovich, but I think he might be a little bit cleaner. I think his, boxing ability might be a little bit more crispy. 14-1 used to box professionally. I like the TKO win over Ryan Spann, where even though Ryan Spann's a little bit chinny, he is fast. That's a light heavyweight moving up. And, he has displayed solid TKO power in the past. Lucas Brzeski, I'm pretty sure he just kind of got leg kick decisioned against Rogerio de Lima back in the day. So, can't take, too much stock into that. He's landed a fair amount of KOs just like Sergey Pavlovich has. And look, I kind of think he has better defense. I think his head movement's better. I think his, blocking in terms of his boxing defense is a lot better with his hands. And I think that he's just going to get the better of the big slugging moments and, land a counter shot kind of similar to how he did against Ryan Spann against Sergey Pavlovich. We've seen Pavlovich, get outstruck by Volkov now. We saw him, kind of getting touched up by Rosenstrike, Biggie Boy at times. And obviously Pavlovich absolutely knocked him out cold. So, Yeah, give me Waldo Cortes Acosta to win this one via second round TKO. All right, next fight on the card, co-main event of the evening, Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. I'm going to be picking Aljo to win this one. This is a 5-round fight that heavily favors Aljo. He has much better cardio, plenty of championship experience, and look, he's beaten similar opposition before. You look at the fight versus Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo doesn't really have the submission ability that Brian Ortega has, but you're not submitting Aljamain Sterling. And, I think that Aljo can have a very similar performance here. He's got better volume on the feet. Brian Ortega may hit a little bit harder naturally, but, his boxing skills aren't that great. Really has not shown any positives with his striking in the last few years. I mean, Brian Ortega really has been a rank spot squatter for a few years now. Kind of saved himself with that little submission versus Yair Rodriguez, but we know Yair has no grappling. Got the shit beaten out of him versus Diego Lopez. And, you're looking back to 2020 versus TKZ for his last win other than that Yair sub in Mexico. Look, I think that Aljo is going to show levels in this fight. Former champ, former bantamweight, he's going to be faster. I think that his wrestling, entries, and control are way better than Brian Ortega. Brian's got slick subs, so does Sterling, but Sterling's wrestling, his control, his takedowns, his ability to hit reversals, to get out of bad positions, it's much better than Brian Ortega's. His cardio is going to be better. I think that we see Volk taking down Brian Ortega over and over again, landing ground and pound, controlling him. I think that Aljo will be able to take down Brian Ortega, get in half guard. Eventually, he will be able to get, into the back taking position. He's going to be able to sink the body, lock in, and once that happens, it's going to be wraps for Brian Ortega, because as soon as Aljo gets the body triangle on you, you're done for the round. He's going to keep it. I think that Aljo is going to get the body triangle plenty of times. Like I said, on the feet, his volume's a lot better. I like his kicking skills, really good low kicks, lots of volume. Just in terms of the eye test, he's going to be way busier. The judges are going to like that. I say that Aljo wins a 50-45 here over Brian Ortega. I think Brian Ortega is really done. He's thinking about moving up a division. Really seems like a guy who's kind of checked out at this point. Had a really bad performance against Diego Lopez, and I've really never even been that high on Diego Lopez. I think that Aljo would stand a good chance against Diego Lopez, to be quite honest. And I love Aljamain Sterling's performance against Movsar Evloev. That was a very, very close fight. And Evloev is arguably, one of the best fighters in this division, if not the best fighter in this division, other than Volk. So for Aljo to go band for band with him in the wrestling, I think that, he's going to be able to handle anything that Brian Ortega has to throw his way this time around. Give me Aljo to win a unanimous 50-45 easy decision over T-City. I think T-City's kind of washed. And he can't really do anything better than Aljo here. Aljo gets it done. On to the main event of the evening. We got the Mountain Tiger, Mingyang Zhang versus Johnny the Goofball Walker. Look, we all know what's going to happen in this fight. Johnny Walker is going to turn into a inflatable balloon man outside of a car wash again and go flying across the octagon as he gets KO'd. Let's just look back at Johnny Walker's career. Look, Corey Anderson knocked him out stiff. That was the beginning of the end. And even back in the day, that TKO where he went flopping all over the deck like a fish, like 4 times, got TKO'd there badly. He's been knocked out so many times in his career. But, you look back at that Corey Anderson TKO, bad knockout loss there. Jamal Hill turned him into a, inflatable balloon man outside of a car wash. Jamal Hill absolutely knocked him out stiff with that right hand. And then Magomed Ankalaev did the exact same thing with the right hook. And Volkan Oezdemir did the exact same thing with the left hook and a right uppercut right behind it. Look, Johnny Walker does not have the ability to avoid getting punched in the chin. And when he does, he goes down. Look, he has some natural ability, with his kicking, with his long-range strikes. He's freakishly athletic. We know the deal with Johnny Walker, but he doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't have any technical skills. We've never seen him really beat anybody all that great. I mean, Khalil Roundtree, Ryan Spann early, TKOs there. I don't see him doing something similar to Mingyang Zhang, who he's on a roll right now. His forward pressure is going to give Johnny Walker tons of issues. Johnny Walker can have success when he's marching guys down and they're kind of giving him respect because they're weary of the crazy techniques coming back at him. And Johnny Walker, really tall, long reach, imposing. When he's able to kind of avalanche on guys, he can have success. That's not going to happen with Mingyang Zhang. Mingyang Zhang, he loves sitting in the pocket, being in the fire. He'll take one to give one. And look, Volkan Oezdemir got Johnny Walker against the cage, unloaded with the hands, knocked him out. Magomed Ankalaev and Jamal Hill, they both caught him with just a slick right hook. I think that Mingyang Zhang is going to basically do the same thing as those three fighters. He's going to close the distance and he's going to land a nice right hand on the chin of Johnny Walker. And Johnny Walker ain't going to take that. I mean, we've even seen, sparring footage of Johnny Walker getting knocked out. He does not have any durability whatsoever anymore. He's getting put in a position to lose here. Yeah, Mingyang Zhang, he's got the angry man right hand. He's got the angry man elbows. He loves being gritty in the pocket. He's got durability. He's taking some nasty shots. He eats them, keeps moving forward. I'd like to see him improve his defense, his head movement a little bit. He's, really implementing the elbows, calf kicks into his game really well. He's improving his offensive arsenal. I think he's going to really let it all go against Walker this weekend, and he is going to knock him out cold. So, yeah, give me Mingyang Zhang, first round knockout. Very simple pick there. So, yeah, that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Enjoy the card this weekend, and have a great rest of your day.